Greetings and salutations. This is Brian Houston and Ryan Peterson, Bryan and Ryan. It is the week before Thanksgiving. We still got another week to go. But in the meantime, we had the most bizarre thing that I think I've experienced so far, and that is the Masters in November. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, and not only in November, but for the TV purposes, it was much earlier.
I
And
like
because
that.
that was much, yeah. So it was crazy having half of it done by noon. It felt like, but yeah, it was kind of cool. But it was hard trying to decide going back and forth between football and the Masters.
I
Although
was
there wasn't
about to,
drama because of Johnson.
I was about to ask you, what did you end up spending most of your time watching then?
I was going back and forth. There really weren't any great games on early. And the Texans and Browns game, which was on locally, it was 3-0 at halftime. So it wasn't exactly a barn burner. But there really was very little drama in the Masters because, Dustin, breaking the Masters record at 20 under. So there really wasn't. I was going back and forth just checking in throughout the afternoon.
Couple of questions there with Dustin Johnson. He set a record, finished at 20 under. That had never been done before, but so many times we heard over the weekend that the playing conditions of the Masters and Augusta National in the fall is just different. It's softer. The ball sticks. It really favors the golfer. It doesn't punish a golfer for a bad shot like it would in April. So
Yeah.
Do you put an asterisk next to Dustin Johnson's record?
I don't. I mean, look, we can probably say it had something to do with it, but when you break the tournament record by 2 shots, I mean, he was doing something right, and no one else broke it. So, I mean, if we're gonna say an asterisk, well, then why didn't anyone else do it? So, heck, Tiger had a 10 on a par 3, on the par 3 12, which, by the way, pretty amazing what Tiger did after that 10 because he played really well. Probably a good lesson for young golfers because I think I would have thrown my bag in the water. But Dustin was just good throughout. The thing that I took out of this tournament was after DeChambeau had won the U.S. Open, everyone was freaking out how the game of golf is changing and it's not a game of skill anymore. It's just hitting it real far. And you and I had talked and we had agreed before the tournament started that I wasn't buying that. Not to say that he won't end up having more great success, but he had never been a consistent winner anyways. And just because he had one great weekend doing it, I just didn't see it happening again in Augusta. And he lost to 63-year-old Bernard Longer. And the reason I point that out is a 63-year-old man, which and Longer broke the record for oldest man to make the cut, but a 63-year-old man playing at a high level, but was able to beat the big, strong DeChambeau. So again, don't tell me it's not a game about skill anymore because it still is. And I think he came crashing back down to earth and was never even really in contention. So. I think all the people freaking out that the game of golf was changed forever and DeChambeau had changed the way it was going to be played. Not for this tournament. It certainly wasn't like that.
Well, we said the same thing about Tiger, and Tiger won his share, but we've also seen Tiger fall back to the pack as he gets older and the injuries stack up. And the nice thing about it is, as we all know, golf is a humbling game, and golf humbles everybody. Ask Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, look what's happened to him since he won. I mean, we thought Jordan was going to be the next Tiger, and I mean his game's all over the place. So yeah, it's a very humbling game. I don't know why I keep trying to play it because it's so humbling. It makes you feel worse every time you play. It's because when you hit that one great shot, you feel like, oh, I can keep doing this.
That's it. It's cocaine. The first time you feel that rush, you got to go back. The one thing I did come away from this with, I always thought that Dustin Johnson was a bit of a jerk. But to watch how emotional he was after the tournament and watching him trying to stay composed when he was doing the post-tournament interview, and seeing how much he was telling his brother to quit crying. His brother'd been caddying for him for
Yeah.
years, and he's just telling his brother to stop crying because you're going to make me do it. This kind of, and it showed just how much he cared, because he has such a don't give a flip look on his face almost all the time, that it's kind of, I can't say that I love him, but it did change a bit of my opinion about him. He does care.
Yeah, and look, golf is hard because look, it's one person, and if they don't have any real personality, it's hard to get excited about them. And look, Dustin Johnson has overcome a lot, personal demons and issues that he's had to overcome. But there's no doubt he may be the most talented guy on the tour, and when he's on, he's remarkable. And I think he's become more likable in the last several years, and it was good to see him smile because he has the running joke is like he has no personality.
No.
I mean, there's no expression, and you want to see somebody at least enjoy it. But I think that had to be pretty special too with his brother. I think that'd be really cool having him as your caddy, and obviously his brother was very emotional. But yeah, pretty cool. And regardless, unbelievable performance. He was amazing.
All right, shift gears to college football, which was a lot more interesting to me than the NFL was yesterday. Even though we lost, 15 games to COVID?
Yeah, it felt like I felt like there was hardly any games going on.
The games that were played were pretty one-sided for the most part. The games that caught my attention the most, I was very interested to see what Florida would do against Arkansas, because the SEC had so few games that night. But Florida being ranked in the top 10, and possibly being the favorite to win the SEC East, just boat raced Arkansas, and Felipe Franks, who was making a homecoming return to the Swamp. But Kyle Trask is the real deal. They're all talking about him being Joe Burrow this year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go that far, because
No.
for one thing, Burrow played the toughest schedule you could play, and he won 15 ball games playing that way. Nobody's going to do that this year. But I got to tell you, man, Florida, the eye test right now, if you had to start talking about who gets in the playoffs, Florida passes the eye test pretty well. What do you think?
They do, but they still have that loss to A&M, and it's hard for me to get around that right now. Because I thought that they were going to beat A&M, and I'm still kind of surprised they did lose that game. So I don't know. I have to see the whole body of work at the end. They obviously, they look like they are, but your body of work also has to count. So I think we're going to have to wait and see how it boils down in the SEC. What is their schedule remaining?
They don't have much.
They should go into so if they win the SEC championship game.
Yeah, that's the game.
Right. I think it comes down to that.
The games they've got coming up, I know they've got LSU in that open week, and that's, the way it looks right now, LSU's checked out for the year. So, I just don't see – they play Vanderbilt next week. That's not going to be a problem. They play Kentucky. Kentucky could be a bit of a struggle, but they got them at home. And then they play LSU. So, really, the schedule really favors them. And then it depends on what happens in the Alabama game, in the SEC championship game, which you assume Alabama's going to be in. If it's a close ball game, Florida makes a great case. If they get killed by Alabama, then things change drastically. But at the moment, who do you have in your top four?
I don't even really have one. Obviously Bama. Notre Dame deserves to be up there right now based on their win on Clemson. And then I'm kind of waiting and seeing. Everyone kind of has Ohio State up there.
Yeah.
But the Big Ten to me still hasn't played enough games.
No.
But see, that's why. And let's say Ohio State gets in. You still have a fourth playoff spot, and then if you have Florida, that's why I'm saying A&M is interesting in all this, because if A&M wins out, obviously they can't be in the championship game if Bama's there. but they're sitting there saying, well, we beat Florida. So that's where I think it's going to be interesting. Now, if Florida wins out and then would beat Bama, then Florida's going to get in, and I don't think A&M's going to get in over Bama. So if you're A&M fans, really,
Well,
I think they would want Florida to get to the championship game and lose.
the only thing I'll say regarding A&M, I think they're a good team. Okay, I don't think when I look at them, eye test wise right now, they don't look as impressive as Florida does.
I agree.
They only beat Florida by 3. They got beat by Alabama by 28.
Right.
That's a bad loss. Florida's only loss is to an A&M team that's good by 3 points. Now, again, I think it still comes down to what does Florida do against Alabama in the championship game. If it's a close ball game, or if by some miracle Florida actually beats Alabama, which could certainly happen, then A&M's done. The other thing that they've got to keep an eye on is that number one, Notre Dame. As much as I'm not a Notre Dame fan, you either love them or hate them, but they look good. I mean, they came off a super emotional, physical win over Clemson. Everybody assumed that Boston College was going to scare the devil out of them, possibly even have an opportunity to upset them. And Ian Book and Notre Dame crushed them.
And Ian Book is the difference. Like it's funny. You look at his record. I don't think anyone ever put him in elite status, but now he's 28-3 as a starting quarterback.
And they're winning because of him, not in spite of him now.
And but he's playing amazing. I'm not comparing him to Burrow, but he's having a performance kind of like Burrow, where I'm like, where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not the same caliber, because what we saw with Burrow we'll never see again probably, but still a great Notre Dame has positioned themselves right now to be in. The other wild card that happened this weekend but again, I had mentioned the Big Ten, and they haven't played enough games. Wisconsin, demolishes Michigan, but again, they've only played 2 games?
Yep.
And Wisconsin is a team that I really feel like if they played their normal schedule, they could be in this discussion, but they just haven't played. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I will say we knew, or at least we kind of had a feeling that Wisconsin was going to be really good this year. I didn't think they were going to be this good. But second thing is Michigan has just quit. It looks to be like
Harbaugh. It looks like Harbaugh has to be done. I think I read the only way that they said he would save his job is beating Ohio State. I don't see that happening, but
that is not going to happen. But everything I hear from national media is that Michigan is one of these places. Harbaugh is a Michigan man. There's no way they're going to fire him. That it would have to be some kind of a behind closed doors, amicable divorce kind of thing, where he was able to leave with his head high and still be very much part of the Michigan family. But he's got 1 year left on his contract. You can't possibly give him an extension. He hasn't gotten it done, and they're just getting hammered now. There's 2 things here at work. Number one, he's being expected to win on a level with Ohio State.
Which isn't fair.
And the question becomes, that sounded great back in the 1970s, even the 1980s, the last time they won a championship. I guess they won with Greasy, though. That was in the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah,
but that's been it. That was back with Lloyd Carr. But that's
right.
Also the last time that Nebraska was a winner of national championships.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago, though. So, that's the thing. That's a long time ago.
With the demographics changing and kids not wanting to play in cold weather, and they want to play on TV, and they want to play in places where they know they're going to get a chance to go to the pros, and they want to play in the big games on the national stage every week, is the Michigan job now changing from a job where people expect them to be in the top 10, top 5 every year, to being like Nebraska, where they ought to be satisfied to win 9 ball games every year and take their bowl win and go?
Yeah, I think Nebraska is a good comparison. The landscape has changed. It's just different. Michigan, now that's not to say that it couldn't be. I think, for example, if Urban Meyer was at Michigan, I think they would win.
So in other words, the right coach could still make
I
that
think the
jump.
right coach could be elite there.
Yeah.
Because, Ohio State, they're not being up north hasn't affected them. They're still reeling out draft picks every year, and they're still really good. But right now, Ohio State is a much better program. It's elite, and Michigan's just not. And I don't look, college football we're seeing is a game where, and I give credit to Nick Saban, and it's why he's so good. College football has changed so much. Nick Saban used to run just that normal pro-style offense. He had to make a change because he saw the change coming. It's about innovative offensive minds. We saw what Jim Brady did at LSU last year, and I think he's doing a great job with the Panthers who, I mean, look, no one thought they could do anything, and they're competitive in every game. You need young, offensive, innovative minds, and Harbaugh is not that. I mean, he's never been. So they need the right coach. Harbaugh, just for what they want to be, Harbaugh is not going to get him there. But I still think you can win at Michigan big, but you just have to get the right guy. But it's hard. There aren't a lot of elite college football coaches that can win anywhere.
I'm looking at the people that could possibly be available. Luke Fickell's a hot name right now with Cincinnati. He certainly looks like somebody that could maybe get it done at Michigan. Here's one thing I'll throw out to you. I've never heard this before, but I was listening to Andy Staples with The Athletic on a podcast over the weekend, and he felt like that the game had kind of passed Harbaugh by. Where's he going to coach now? Is he going to go back to the NFL? Who would want him in the NFL now based on what he's done at Michigan? It's just not worked.
Right.
Then he threw out the other name he mentioned that he felt like was kind of in the same position, Gary Patterson. What do you think? Has his time kind of run out at TCU? I mean, everybody has a shelf life. And Gary Patterson's one of the best coaches in college football for a long time. But, is the TCU program finally, has it done all it can do under Patterson? Is it going to need new blood now, or what do you think?
That's a hard one. I haven't thought about. I think the difference I would say with Patterson is he built that TCU program. I mean, before Patterson, TCU was not a national brand. Being in a playoff discussion, give me a break. TCU, I mean, he had them on the cusp, however many years ago that was. So I don't know. I mean, Patterson, look, the thing with a program like TCU is if you have a coach that's committed and wants to be there and is not going to jump ship, that to me is why I don't think it's the same. Maybe he has hit his ceiling there, and they're as high as they're ever going to go. But I think Patterson deserves more respect and credit with that program because of what he did with it. And also because the thing is, if you get a young up-and-coming coach, look, we saw what happened at Baylor. Rule left. He was there a couple years, and he leaves. And TCU, I would put in the same. If you get a young coach that's really good, they're not going to stay if there's a better job that comes open. And I think, Patterson has been loyal, committed. I know that being a Kansas guy, Kansas State, Patterson had Kansas State ties. He played there. I know there were a lot of K-State people hoping after Snyder had left that Patterson would be in the discussion, but he was loyal to what he was doing at TCU. And I think that's important for a program like that you have a guy that's going to be there after he wins 10, 11 games. He's not looking to bail.
Let me just run through this just to make the case, just the argument. I'm not suggesting he should go either, but yeah. It's worth examining. 2016, he's 6-7. 2017, he's 11-3, and he finishes second in the conference. In 2018, 7-6, tied for fifth in the conference. 2018, 2019, he's 5-7, 3-6 in the conference, tied for seventh. Right now, he's 3-4. They got housed by West Virginia over the weekend. These last 3 years, I mean, when you look at the last 5 years, he's had one great year, and the other years were either below 500 or one game above 500, which doesn't look like a program trending in a good direction right now is all I would say.
Yeah, the only argument I would make is what other Big 12 coach has been better outside of Norman and I
Lincoln
guess
Riley was the only name I could
guess
come up with.
right, and I guess Stillwater. You know, I feel like the Big 12, especially since they've gone to the 10 team and everybody plays everybody. See, here's the thing: a lot of people disrespect the Big 12 as a conference, and I get it. But it's the only conference where everybody has to play everybody every year. There's no you get to avoid these 4 teams this year. This team's really good. We get to avoid them this year. So I feel like they cannibalize each other every year, and it's such a competitive league where there's not a huge separation that it's just hard. And my thing is, I say this whenever there's people want to coach out. Who are you going to get that's better than Peterson, that's going to have the success that he's had, and isn't going to be looking to bolt if they have one good year? Who are you going to get at TCU?
Yeah.
Same thing, at Kansas State when Snyder was going to retire, people were flipping out that Chris Kleiman, oh my gosh, you can get better than him. I'm like, that guy is one. You have to understand what you are. Chris Kleiman, to me, was a great hire. And I think he's going to do a great job in Manhattan. He has him going in the right direction. He was a one AA coach, but he had won national championships there. But my thing is, you have to have a guy that is going to be good enough that's better. And I don't know what better coach is going to replace Peterson at TCU right now.
No. Well, and again, I don't know that there is one better anyway.
Yeah.
And
it's a valid argument because, you look at the record, it's not great. But then that's what I'm saying. You look at some of these other Big 12 schools, look at Texas. It's like, well, what have they done? There's all these Big 12 programs have kind of been mired in average mediocrity, if you will, over the last 5 years.
Okay, one last thing. In the year of COVID-19, Will Muschamp got the boot on Sunday after the third straight hammering he got against we'll just say it, a very mediocre Ole Miss team.
Yeah.
59-42 loss to Ole Miss. His last 3 games have been nightmares where he's given up somewhere near 50 points in each one of those ball games. And 2 of those games were to LSU, which we've seen has been a really bad team this year. Ole Miss is a really bad team defensively this year. And so he's gone. He had 2 good years at South Carolina, then the last 3 have been losers. And so, a lot of people were saying, oh, you just can't fire somebody during COVID-19. And the economics of it are that he's got like a $13 million buyout. But the argument was made, Ray Tanner, the athletic director, said, we're already playing to 25% capacity. If we go back to normal next year and we bring Will Muschamp back, fan apathy is going to be such that we can't afford to not have this 80,000 seat stadium crammed and excited again. And Muschamp's just kind of run out of gas there.
So I don't ever want to kick a guy while he's down. I did not like the hire of Muschamp when South Carolina hired him. I didn't understand it. I've never been a Muschamp's guy. If you look at his 9 years as a head coach in the SEC, in the weaker division, look, the SEC is good, but in the SEC, the West is the loaded, stronger division typically. In the weaker Eastern Division, he has been – he hasn't even been in the top 2 of that division, but twice in 9 years.
Right.
At South Carolina, he's been no better than 4th in the division, except for 2017 when he won 9 games. His team, I think he can be a good defensive coordinator, but I've never bought him as a head coach. And it didn't work out at Florida. I just didn't understand why South Carolina hired him to begin with. I just didn't understand it. And yeah, because right now, and look at that division now, because Florida is trending back up in the right direction. Georgia, I know they've had some struggles this year, but Georgia's back up. They can't compete with those teams, but maybe South Carolina is what they are. They're a team that maybe can win 7-8 games.
But here's the thing, though. The argument is, how is it that Clemson is in the same state and they are perennial? If they're not number 1, the number 2, and no further drop, and it's gone that way now for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So that's got to be tough for South Carolina fans to take. And keep in mind, let me take you back. Do you not remember when Will Muschamp was the Texas head football coach in waiting under Mac Brown? He was going to be the next guy. Imagine what would have happened if that had been the case.
I think it would look pretty much the same as it is now, mediocre football that we've seen in Austin for a long time now.
All right, we'll move on. Pro football, I'm not so much worried about time today. We'll just do it till we finish it. The pro football, we didn't have the Cowboys yesterday, so it was nice to be able to just relax and watch football and not be in anguish all day like we normally would be. But some pretty interesting things happened in the league yesterday. The game of the day, without argument, was the Buffalo-Arizona game. And, here's Buffalo, throws a touchdown pass with 30 seconds to go in the ball game. Ball game's over. Ball game is over.
Should be.
2 plays. And Kyler Murray throws it up for grabs in the end zone. There are people all around DeAndre Hopkins, and he grabs the ball and comes down with it with 1 second left in the game. Unbelievable. 6-3 now.
So Kyler Murray, it's incredible what he's doing. I kind of feel like when Johnny Manziel was coming out of college, I remember people asking me, do you think it's going to work? And my initial response on Manziel was, I just don't have a good feeling, because as great of a player Johnny was in college, so much of it came off broken plays. It was just magical plays that he would do with his athleticism. And in the NFL, you can't really get away with that because of the speed. Well, the thing that's amazing about Kyler Murray is he's doing that in the NFL, because the reality is so many of these games, they have a slow start offensively. The plays aren't working. And it's just him making plays with his legs. I mean, he had, I think, a couple touchdown runs yesterday. He's zigging and zagging. I don't know who else could make those plays, maybe Lamar Jackson. And then that play at the end, I think Kingsbury, the coach, said it wasn't even the actual play they called. But, I mean, he rolls left against his body and heaves it perfectly. Hopkins makes a great catch, but he's doing things. He's playing NFL football like he's playing in the schoolyard.
It's
and it's working.
It's video games.
Yeah, and it's crazy. We'll see if he can continue to do it. I always feel like even this year, teams have started to catch up on Lamar Jackson. Not saying he's not good anymore, but he was an MVP last year, and now teams have kind of figured out how to play him defensively. But yeah, Kyler is amazing. And you look at him, he's not a big guy. He looks so short out there compared to everybody else, but he's just quick. He's a good passer. But I mean, it was amazing. That last play was incredible. And I mean, they're winning just with him basically, playing schoolyard football.
The other very interesting game. 2 things came away with that. Kyler Murray is incredible right now. I think at some point the league's going to catch up with him, or he's so small that he'll get broken in half. That's one thing. The other thing is I still come away from that game feeling like Buffalo's a really good football team.
They are. Yeah,
I still think they win the NFC East. They're 7-3. The Dolphins are 6-3. The Dolphins and the Bills, where have they been for the last 20 years? But they both have franchise quarterbacks now for the first time in decades, and Josh Allen looks like he's the real deal. Tua looks great so far. They've won 5 in a row.
Yeah, and, the Tua decision continues to look even better because, I couldn't believe when they were going to put him in when they did. Now they've won 5 in a row, probably going to be 6 in a row after next week. So, yeah, it's funny. You're going to have an NFC East division title that may go down to the wire, and it doesn't include the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm refreshed.
And now the Patriots, who have had a legendary quarterback for 20 years now, they're going to have to watch these other 2 rivals finally have, which they have not had in that entire time. Both of these teams actually have their franchise quarterback.
You made a comment earlier when we were talking before we went on, talking about it. Is the Arizona success because of the coaching of Cliff Kingsbury, or is it just because Kyler Murray is just magic? And what we're seeing, and we're seeing it with New England as evident as anything, if you don't have a quarterback, and I mean a legit franchise quarterback, you got problems. I don't think Cam Newton, even though they beat Lamar and Baltimore the other night. I don't think he is on that level anymore. And they're struggling because of it. So it just proves, and we saw it, listen, with the greatest coaches, Tom Landry, when his quarterbacks started to decline, his run at Dallas ended.
Yeah.
We've seen it with Dallas when Aikman finally went away. There was a a deep dark hole full of trash that played quarterback for a long time before Romo came back in. That organization's so dysfunctional. They wasted Romo's career though while he was there. But we've seen really good coaches that just, you've got to have that guy at quarterback. And so now finally Buffalo's got that guy, it seems. And Tua seems to be the guy in Miami, and he's got a good team around him. I see bright futures for both of those teams.
And and the funny thing, this isn't to suggest that Belichick isn't a good coach.
No, he's a great coach.
You saw what Belichick beat Baltimore yesterday. He devises a great defensive game plan and they run the football. But they're not going to be able to beat the elite teams. They're not going to be able to be what they've been. An elite quarterback covers up so many flaws, and every team you see, if they're, they may look better than they are because of that quarterback. The moment he's gone, things are a lot harder. You can't have a turnover and still get over it because you don't have that elite guy at the most important position. And look, and we've already said this before, that's, Belichick and Brady had this combination for 2 decades where no one else in their division had anything worth a darn. And so they were able to take advantage of that. And now it just so happens the year that Brady's gone is the year these other 2 teams that have really been mediocre for 2 decades are now all of a sudden they have found their guys. Still early probably on Tua, but he's looked great so far. He's looked better each week that he's played. So, yeah, definitely interesting and a new era in the NFL for sure.
And the Saints, I still think the Saints probably, in my mind, are if they're not the best team in the NFC, they're one of the top 2 or 3. They beat San Francisco, but Drew Brees is hurt now, and we don't know the extent of it at this moment. It was a rib injury, but when he was hurt last year, they had Teddy Bridgewater to turn to. Now it's Jameis Winston. I don't have the faith in Jameis Winston that I had in Teddy Bridgewater. What do you think about Jameis Winston as the quarterback going forward for the Saints if he has to play for a prolonged period of time?
So, look, after what the Saints did last year with Bridgewater, I still think it's possible with Winston just because I think Sean Payton is that good of a coach. He figures out these ways. He figured out ways to get the best out of Bridgewater. The key is going to be, is Winston going to turn the football over? Because last year, every other play, it seemed like he was fumbling or throwing a pick. Winston has the talent. That's never been an issue. He has the physical gifts better than Brees. Honestly, they could actually open the playbook up even more because Jameis could probably complete some passes that Drew can't. But that Saints offense is all about being methodical, precise, accurate, don't turn the football over. So I still think the Saints will be fine. I wouldn't expect Brees to be out an extended period, maybe a few weeks, and I think the Saints are good enough that they can get around it. But I don't know. I'm gonna weigh in on the coaching and think that Peyton's good enough that he can get the best out of him. Now, if it was the rest of the season, probably wouldn't feel good about it, but I would assume Brees will be back when they need him.
And just when you thought it couldn't get weirder in the NFC East, the Giants beat the Eagles yesterday. And so now you got the Eagles and the Giants with 3 wins. Eagles by a half game up in first place. Dallas plays a really bad Minnesota team, except that they've got Dalvin Cook this coming week. But here's Dallas. They're 1 game back. What do they still got a chance, as ridiculous as that sounds.
Yeah, yesterday, they didn't play, and it might have been their best week of the season. So the Eagles losing to the Giants, Washington almost pulled out a miracle in Detroit, but they're right there. Look, it's 4 bad football teams. Can you be the best of a group of bad teams? With that schedule they have left, it's very possible. If Andy Dalton is back, the way the defense is playing, I think that they absolutely have a chance. But yeah, we could see. I'm looking at it. If you win 6 games,
Oh, yeah.
you
Magic
should. I
number.
think you'll win the division.
Magic number. No
Yeah.
doubt. It's what a year. One last thought, and then we'll wrap it up. The thing that I'm seeing, and I'm starting to see the trend here, you're seeing a lot of teams that were expected to be really good on the college level that aren't. Michigan, Penn State, 0-4
Penn State
now.
0-4.
LSU. And I'm wondering how much of an impact COVID-19 is having on these teams when they know that they're pretty much out of it. There seems like there's just a lot of there's the teams that are very good this year have a shot at championships, and it seems like the ones that aren't very good this year that should be on a under a normal circumstance, the focus is just not there. What do you think? I mean, it looks like that they weren't all in to begin with. I know in LSU's case, it's a lack of leadership. They lost so many players from last year, and you have a massive change in your coaching staff, and you have so few returning leaders, and they lost people like Burrow and Patrick Queen and Delpit and people like that were real leaders. But it just looks like these teams, when they got off to a bad start, it's just kind of like, okay, I'm waiting to start seeing this rash of opt-outs and just saying, screw it, we're done. What's the point?
Yeah, I think there might be something to that because look, it's just not the same, and especially in the Big Ten where you're not playing as many games to begin with. I think it comes to a point, especially if a guy knows that he has a professional future. At this point, you're worrying about yourself, and then even guys that maybe didn't have as high of a grade. Right now, they're all about trying to get their grade up. Team success just doesn't matter between COVID. It's a shortened season. You don't even know if your next game is going to be played. Mm-hmm. It could get canceled. So obviously these guys got to worry about themselves, and it's kind of just hurt the whole dynamic because, I mean, the reality, and like you said, the only teams, the teams that are, I guess, at the top that know they can win a national championship, which there are very few right now that even have that opportunity. They're the only ones that we're seeing, on top of their game every week. And I know it's got to be hard for coaches too. They've missed practice time. You're dealing with younger kids that aren't professionals. Look, it's 2020.
I was about to say, I firmly agree with all these kids. I'm done. I'm so done with 2020. Mentally, I was heartbroken for Mejia here in Texas. They made the playoffs. They won their first round playoff game. A kid tested positive. They forfeit. The season's over. They can't play their playoff game this week, and we're going to see some more of that. We saw some last week where you've had a good year, and all it takes is one positive. If he's in contact with everybody in the room, it's over. And so that stress and worry and mental strain, and the teams that we've seen that have kind of suddenly started to have this rash, you don't see Alabama having this issue right now, right? But LSU, they're 2-4, 5, something like that. And suddenly they all go to a Halloween party. Everybody that is kind of like everybody that's not really contending, just kind of, screw it. I'm going to go out and have a good time.
Yeah. I mean, it gets to the point, it just gets old. This whole thing gets old. And, I will say, regardless of what happens, I think all of these kids that have played, because they've at least given us some normalcy.
Yeah.
And, if there was another game played the rest of the season, they at least gave us some fun and some enjoyable moments.
Absolutely.
Here in the fall before the holidays.
I mean, I've enjoyed the games, and I appreciate what these players have done. And I'm so thankful that we've had some semblance of, the opportunity to get away from COVID for 6 or 7 hours on a Saturday or 6 or 7 hours on a Sunday and just forget about that stuff and just watch football. Has been, I knew going into the season, I could not survive this fall without having my college football. And so, even if it's been bad for my team, I've just been grateful to see these guys line up and try to make it happen. And man, and then as you've seen these games get canceled and you see the spike, you realize just how difficult this thing has been for administrators and coaches, and then the players who've just had to sacrifice so much just to try to keep themselves well. And then,
Right.
even then, that even with all that attempt, there's still always there's got to be stress. If you're getting tested 3 times a week, you have got to be just, holding your breath every time you take that test, because I've seen people that just, worked really hard to stay well, still get it. So
Yeah.
it's just a maddening year. So I'm grateful for whatever we get. And I've heard somebody say once before, in 2020, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. So that's as good as it goes. Any final words from you before we wrap it up?
No, not really. Just
I'm
been,
done.
it's just, yeah, it's kind of depressing way to end the show today, but yeah, it's just, I do thank the football players, and I feel for those that, like those kids in Mahia, and I know there are going to be others, your heart does break for them because you work so hard,
Mhm.
put so much into it, and they care. They're playing because they care.
Yeah,
To have it taken away, that's tough.
it is tough. But this too shall pass.
Yes, it will.
Someday we will get back to normal. I hope it's sooner than later. So, all right, Ryan, appreciate your time as always. And want to remind everybody, we drop this on Tuesday mornings. And so please watch on YouTube, share with your friends, leave a comment. Like it or not, feel free to rip it. That's cool. I'm good with that. But we will talk to you again next week, buddy.
See you, bud.
All right, I'm Brian Houston. That's Ryan Peterson. Bryan and Ryan, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.